person about the effects of marijuana on their brain, but that's got to wait because that doesn't predict change. So we got to do all the groundwork first. So what she did is she went straight for a shared agenda, which is, wow, so finding a way to relax or chill out is pretty important to you. Now we can discuss things because we're on the same page. So if I had a chalkboard, I would do this. Okay, so we've been talking about engaging and using these tools, open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections to engage, but we're kind of naturally going into the second process, which is focusing. Finding that shared agenda is the focusing. So what happens is, as you know that you've got that rapport, you've got that connection, you're naturally going to ease into that second step, which is this finding a shared agenda that we jointly agree we're going to talk about, right? And you guys are already kind of naturally doing that with some of these reflections you're making. All right, last one, and then we'll move forward. This behavior plan, this is a teacher. This behavior plan you gave us doesn't work. Why should I take time away from my best students to implement a plan that doesn't work? So tempting to explain, well, if you would just give it some time, but we want to reflect first. Say again? Time with your students is very important to you. What do you think? Nice. And she's getting at the real frustration this person's feeling. So now they're feeling kind of understood. So the agitation's going to come down a notch. Anybody else want to throw one out for this? Finding a plan that works is important to you. Yeah. And even something like, I hear you. So you want to make sure if you're going to take away valuable time from some of your best students, that what you're doing is worthwhile. You really want to know that it's worthwhile. Okay. When in doubt, we reflect. So we've been talking about ORs. Let's real quickly go through summaries. Summaries are kind of like giant reflections. It's just a way of pulling together your best reflections. And usually when we summarize, we're pulling together both some of the reflections of the sustained side and some of the reflections about the change talk side, always ending with the change talk side. And that way we are showing and understanding that they're ambivalent and that there are two sides. Usually with a summary, we will end with something we call a key question, which helps move it forward. Let's see if I have an example up here. Oh, there are all your beautiful reflections you've been making. And there's your summary. Let me give you an example. Let me try summarizing with a teacher. So if it's all right, I'd like to summarize some of the things we've been talking about with regards to this plan that we're looking at for little Joey. I hear you that he takes a tremendous amount of your time, and you don't feel particularly equipped to deal with some of the behaviors that he's having in the classroom and still be helpful to the rest of the other students. And I hear you. You want to be helpful to Joey as much as you can, while also not losing the effectiveness you're already having with the rest of your class. You really care a lot about all of your students. So that's my summary. Now, I'm going to end it with a key question, which is, so I wonder what your thoughts are for how we might address all of this picture, both Joey and your other individuals in your class. That's the key question. Oftentimes that key question will help us get a little more change talk from that person. Summaries are a really good thing if you're running out of time, or if somebody's actually ready to move forward into kind of planning, or if you need to shift direction because you're getting off track. A summary is a nice way to kind of pull it together and move. I think we already did the partnering video. Let's see. Yeah, we did this one. Good, because I want to have time to get to some of this other good stuff. So going back to those phases, we've talked about using the core client-centered skills, the open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries to engage. We've talked a little bit about finding that shared agenda, which is the focusing, right? So moving on. Here's some other ways to focus real quickly. I've just threw some example questions up there. If you're going to change something about your behavior, what might that be? What might that look like? How do you imagine you might go about it? These are all nice, open, agenda-setting questions. What would you like to make sure we take care of today? What else? What are your concerns? What's most important for us to work on? What would you like to change? Where would you like to start? And again, remembering if you've got somebody who's a young person, they may not respond well when it's this vague. So you may want to give them some choices. I want to talk a little bit about providing information, which oftentimes we do have to provide information. Maybe an individual has misinformation, or maybe they need to know something. You guys are in the role of consultant a lot of the times with the teachers. You have information that you're expected to give. So how we give it is really key. And we can do it and still keep that motivational interviewing hat on, if you will. I like to think of giving information in terms of a sandwich. And we just did this with the example we were talking about before. So first thing I always do is I ask permission. If it's all right with you, what I'm doing there is showing that I am not taking over here. Ultimately, you make your own decisions. It's a very explicit way of saying you are in charge of you. So if it's all right with you, and usually they'll say, okay. So once we ask permission, and sometimes we'll say, a lot of times with teens, and what you do with this information is totally up to you. It's your choice. Not taking that away. So now, elicit, provide, elicit. That's our sandwich. Remembering that change talk only counts when it comes out of that person's mouth. So we want to start with it coming out of their mouth. We want to end with it coming out of their mouth. And in the middle is the meat, the information that we need to share. So the first thing we do is, what's your understanding of whatever the situation may be? What would you like to know? What else would be helpful to you to know? So we're getting it out of their mouths. It also keeps us from repeating things that somebody already knows. It is not useful if they know it and we restate it. There is nothing useful about that. We want it to come out of them. So we ask. Then we give the information, whatever piece of information we want to give. We want to keep it limited. We don't want to overwhelm. I always laugh that I have up here. It's a reminder to me. Avoid jargon and percentages. I can't believe I'm going to share this, and it's being videotaped, but I'm going to anyway. So I learn because I screw up with my kids all the time. That's just how I learn. One day my kids were asking me some questions about homosexuality. It turns out my brother is gay, and he has a partner, long-term partner. They've been married now for several years. And I knew the conversation was going to come up at some point, but the day that it did come up, I wasn't really prepared. Because I knew they'd hear stuff at school and have questions, but this is all they've ever known. They know my brother, they have 2 uncles, and it's all good. So my kids and I were driving to go see Uncle Thomas and Uncle Rodney, and they're asking me about, what does it mean to be gay and this and that. And I must have been more uncomfortable than I thought I would be, because I started giving them percentages. Oh, this is very normal, and 1 in 10, and I'm like, what is coming out of my mouth? Oh my God. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep it short and sweet. When we give information, remembering that it's not the information that's critical, it's what comes before and what comes after. And I'm guilty of that. So staying away from the percentages. If we are going to give some advice for change, and sometimes, especially with youth, we're going to do that because, again, just putting it all out there on them, they're going to shut down. If we give options, you might try this, some people try this, and some people do find that this is helpful. You oftentimes will be more successful by giving options that are 3 levels of difficulty. So an easy, a middle, and a hard. And say, I'm wondering if any of those or something else fits for you. And then it comes back out of their mouth again. So you provide the information, and then this is the part when we're in a hurry we forget to do. We check back in. So I just gave you a whole lot of information about X, Y, and Z, and I'm wondering, what do you take away from that? What fits for you? What are your thoughts? And then we wait, and we see what they give us. And a lot of times we'll get some change talk. Any questions about that elicit, provide, elicit sandwich? So this is one way of giving information with our MI hat still on, remembering that it's not the information we're giving that predicts the change. Elicit, provide, elicit. Sometimes we have to give information and there's no room to ask permission. If somebody's engaging in an immediately threatening behavior, threatening to their own safety or the safety of someone else, we're not going to ask permission. But we can still keep that MI spirit. But now is when we begin to break out of motivational interviewing. If there is an immediate risk to the safety of self or others, clearly the number one goal is not in that moment so much about respecting autonomy and behavior change as it is about ensuring safety. But those are brief moments, hopefully. Remembering again that motivational interviewing is not a panacea. That being said, I will tell you there are many experts in motivational interviewing who very specifically utilize it when there's suicidal ideation and suicidal gestures or self-injuring. So it's still appropriate to keep that spirit. The key is, you're honest. You say, I have some concerns about, I want to share with you something that worries me. You assert, yes, you are the one who ultimately makes the decision. And that's true. Even with somebody that has to be involuntarily hospitalized, that's still true. Once they get out of the hospital, they are the ones making the ultimate decision. So we want to make sure that we demonstrate that we're respecting that. And then we want to check in with them. And then if they give you information that you don't want to hear about what their perspective is, let's say it's very different than yours, arguing is not going to do anything but draw that line in the sand and cause that sustained talk, which makes it worse. So we don't want to do that. We want to reflect. Now that doesn't mean that we then don't have to do other things to keep somebody safe. We may still have to do those things, but we can keep the spirit of motivational interviewing, hearing, respecting, understanding. Okay? Convincing is tempting at those times, but it doesn't work. All right, we talked about engaging, we've talked about focusing. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about evoking change talk. Now, we've already talked about why we want to do that, because it predicts change. So now I want to talk about how we do it. There are different types of change talk. All of them are wonderful, and all of them are predictive of change. So we have change talk that's about desire. I know I can get to school on time. I've just got to start using that alarm clock. Okay? That's can. I want to get to school on time. I really want to. I don't want to fail. I don't want to get kicked out for something stupid like that. Desire, right? Reasons. I know getting angry gets me in trouble. It makes everybody not want to be around me and I lose friends. That's reasons, right? I need to do this or my family's not going to let me stay at the house anymore. That's need. And then commitment, which is kind of gold. I'm going to go out and buy those sneakers today and start running as a way of reducing my stress. Okay. All right, all of that is predictive of change. All of it. Sometimes we get some people will call it change talk light. So they'll say, well, I'll think about going to school tomorrow. So we could go up against that, or we can take the part that is still change talk. All right, so you're willing to give it some thought. You've not completely ruled it out. This is something that you're going to consider. All right, I'm going to run with it, even if it's little. I'm going to run with it. All of this predicts change at some point down the road. When we are evoking change talk, we ask, which we've already talked about, we reflect, which we've already talked about, and then we ask people to elaborate. Tell me more, which you're all quite good at. With youth, sometimes we don't get as much of the change talk. They're not as forthcoming with that. Sometimes a decrease in the sustained talk is more indicative that we're making progress than an increase in change talk. So what you may notice is not that they're saying, oh, I'm going to go out and do such and such. You may not get that. But what you may get is less of the pushing back, pushing back, pushing back. And as that sustained talk goes down, you know you're headed in the right direction. So softening sustained talk, there are lots of things we can do with that. One is to shift focus. So if I'm walking along a path and I encounter a boulder in the road, I have some options. I can push until my hands are bloody, or what can I do instead? Go around it. Right? Let me see if I can think of an example. I'll think of a substance example. Let's say a kid is saying, you know, you guys think I'm an addict. I'm not an addict. I don't have that kind of problem. Now, we could start arguing with him about the criteria for addiction and that he actually meets criteria for addiction. Or we can walk right around that boulder in the road. We can say, okay, so labeling you is not something that you're going to find helpful at all. I wonder if we could talk about some of the things that are going on in your life that are concerning you right now. I'm going right around it. We're going to come back, but I'm not going to push up against the boulder. You may reflect it, use that double-sided reflection so they feel heard. You may reframe it. We can talk about that in a minute. And you may emphasize autonomy. I said this already, that sometimes that sustained talk, the reduction is going to be more apparent when you're working with young people. Also, when you get change talk statements with an adolescent, it's not as beautiful as it is with an adult. You know, an adult's going to say, I need to start exercising, or I'm never going to get this diabetes under control. And you're like, oh, yeah. And a kid may say, yeah, maybe I should do something sometimes. I don't know. And you're like, wait, where was the change talk in that? But it's there. We have to really tune our ears to hear it, because it's mixed in with some of that ambivalence. That's okay. That's normal. So there are all different ways for evoking change talk. I'm not going to go into great detail about this just because of some of the time limitations that we have. I'm noticing some people stepping out. Do we need a quick bathroom break, or is everybody okay? Anybody need to go to the bathroom? Okay, everybody's okay. Let's push forward. I'm just going to touch briefly on some of these, and then this is beyond the scope of a 4-hour workshop. But when we are evoking change talk, we're still using those core skills: open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. We're using that all the way through. You may have heard, those of you that are a little more familiar, actually I'll show a video before we wrap up today that has an example of the ruler. You heard me say, on a scale of 1 to 10 for importance and confidence, that's the ruler scale. So if you said to me, Beth, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can engage in formal exercise during the work week? And I say, well, I have been making sure to take the steps instead of the elevator, so I guess I'd give it a 3. And you have a choice there. You could say, oh, a 3, why not a 4? And I'm going to give you sustained talk. All right, I'm going to tell you why it wasn't a 4. We don't want to do that. But you could say a 3. Okay, so it's a 3. I'm wondering why a 3 and not a 1. Well, because I have been doing things like at work to make sure I'm walking a little more when I have an option of one or the other. And I've been parking a little further out at the grocery store instead of circling until I find a really good spot. So I'm doing some things during the work week that I know are helping a little bit. It's just there's more I wish I could do. So what did I just give you? Sustained talk or change talk? Change talk, right. So you say on a scale of 1 to 10, and then you ask, oh, wow, so that number, how come not a lower number? Now, obviously, if somebody says a 1, you're not going to say, oh, how come not a lower number? But you can say the second part, which would be, okay, so right now it's a 1. I'm wondering, what would it take to bring it up even just a little bit? Let's say to like a 2. Make you a little more confident that you could get some physical activity into your work week. Well, I guess I could make sure that during my break in the morning I walk. I could go get coffee or something. That's all the way over in the other building. Okay, so you're thinking that if you went and got coffee on your breaks in the morning, that would increase your confidence a little bit because you'd see that you were doing it. That would help. All right, so we're focusing in on the change talk side. So that's the ruler. That's a common one that's used. Typical day you probably use already. Oftentimes I'll ask people this with regards to sleep or smoking or different behaviors. Tell me about a typical day. So if I'm a fly on the wall and I see you, what's your morning look like? What's your afternoon look like? What about after dinner? What'd you do then? Typical day. And I get a lot of information that then I can ask for elaboration about. Querying extremes when somebody's really stuck. So if you don't change this behavior, what's the worst thing that could happen? All right, so then you're getting some change talk. If you do change this behavior, what's the best thing that could happen? You're going to get some change talk. So that's querying extremes when someone's kind of stuck. Ears is kind of like oars. It's just instead of open-ended questions, you're asking them to elaborate on the information they gave you, which is why it's E. Hypothetical questions when somebody's really pushing back. I like this one with kids. Somebody says, there is no way I'm going to go see a therapist. No way, Jose. Okay. So I know you've had a lot on your plate and a lot of things have been going wrong in your home life. And I also hear you loud and clear that you're not really sure about going to see a therapist right now. I wonder if hypothetically you were going to see a therapist, what might be one good thing that would come from that? So you can do hypothetical however you want. And what it's doing is saying, I'm not going to push you in a corner. I'm not going to tell you have to do this. I'm just saying hypothetically, if you were going to do it, what would that look like? Where would you start? What would have to happen to make it worthwhile to you? However you want to ask it. So hypothetically is a wonderful way when somebody's really entrenched to say, okay, fair enough. Hypothetically, though, if you were, what would that look like? Works pretty well. Looking forward. So looking forward, with teens, I notice that looking forward is not like when I work with some of my older adults. With an older adult, I can say, looking forward 5 years, if you don't choose or change anything, what do you imagine may happen? And they'll say, I'll die. I say that to a kid, and they're like, 5 years? I'll be old by then. Looking forward to like tomorrow. What might, but you choose based on developmental level. Looking forward, though, can get them to kind of ponder, if I don't change anything, what's it going to look like for me? But you do want to keep the duration of time a little shorter when you're working with young people. Goals and values. This is one of the most important strategies that I think we can use when we're utilizing motivational interviewing. We want to understand where people are coming from. I'm going to tell you a story. This is a smoking story. Bear with me. I know I have lots of health examples. This comes out of one of Bill Miller's introductory motivational interviewing book, and it gives me chills every time I tell it. So this guy comes to see Bill Miller for assistance stopping smoking. And so they're meeting for the first time, and they're talking about the smoking and why this guy's concerned about his smoking and why he's been thinking about quitting and how hard it's been, and he's tried before, all of that. So at one point, towards the end of the session, Bill Miller says, all right, so if it's okay with you, I'd like to put the smoking aside for a minute and just find out a little bit about you. What's most important to you? What are your goals? What are your priorities? And the guy pauses for a second, and he says, you know, I guess the most important thing to me is to be a good dad. So they talk a little bit about that, and they wrap up the session and schedule the guy to come back a couple weeks later. So the guy comes back a couple of weeks later and sits down and says, hey, I just wanted to tell you, shortly after the last visit, I quit smoking. So Bill Miller, he's this little unassuming guy, he says, really? What happened? Tell me about it. And the guy says, well, it was a few days after we met, and I was going to pick my kids up from school, and I realized I was out of cigarettes. So I was trying to figure out if I had time to stop at the 7-Eleven and grab a pack of cigarettes. And I was also kind of watching the sky because there was a storm that was coming in, and I wanted to get there before it rained. And I thought, okay, if I hurry, I can grab a quick pack of cigarettes, have a quick cigarette before I get to the school. So he ran in, got his cigarettes, got back in the car, lit up, driving. And he says, just as I was turning the corner onto the street where the school was, all of a sudden the sky began to fall. It was raining and thundering and lightning, and the wind was blowing. And he said, as I pulled up in front of the school, I looked, and there were my 2 children huddled up on the front steps of the school, terrified and soaking wet. And I looked at the cigarette in my hand, and I remember what I told you, that the most important thing to me in the whole world is to be a good dad. And I realized this is keeping me from being a good dad. And I put it out and I threw away that pack. That's the last one I had. So I love that story because what helped this guy quit was not Bill Miller giving him lots of good reasons. He could have given all sorts of good reasons to quit. It was actually not even talking about the cigarettes per se. It was talking about the priorities this man holds for himself, the values. That is such a powerful motivator for most of us. And when we ourselves are able to identify that discrepancy between our values and our behavior, we will usually be more motivated to do something about it. So I emphasize talking, even to kids, about the things that are most important to them. Maybe it's their friends, maybe it's how they look. It doesn't matter, it's important to them. And that's the motivator. That's what's driving the behavior. And then last but not least is the coming alongside. Let's say we've talked to somebody about a particular behavior change or potentially even looking at that, and they say, no way, no how, this is not something I'm willing to consider right now. I am not going to go see a tutor to help me with math. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it. So what do we do there? Because we want change talk, right? We can't push them. I mean, we can, but we'll lose them. So sometimes what we do after we've tried everything else is we do something called coming alongside, which is, okay, so I hear you loud and clear. Right now, it doesn't seem like something that would be worth doing for you. It would be uncomfortable, it would take time away from you with your friends, and you don't want to do it. So that's the coming alongside part. It's not fighting them, it's just saying, okay, that's what I hear. Then you stick in a key question at the end. It's kind of like squeezing one more drop of change talk out of that rag. So I'm wondering, if you were going to go see a tutor, what would have to happen to make you say to yourself, all right, it's time, I need to get some help with this? So it's that last little question that says, okay, fair enough. Now's not the time. I'm wondering how you would know it is time. What would have to happen for you to make that decision? And you're going to get just a little bit more change talk, which you get to add to your little tally list. Questions? All right, you guys are quiet. Let's play a game. Let's wake up. So I went over with you the different types of change talk. All right, let's see how it goes. Was there a question, or everybody's good? All right. I love to smoke my weed. I could probably do it if I tried. All right, so which one is that? Ability, yeah. Yeah, that's ability. All right, I shouldn't have put the glasses on and pulled them off again. That was a bad idea. I hate this place. I just want to wake up sober in the morning. Okay, what is it? Desire, okay. Yeah, I blew off school on Friday. Mm-hmm. I stayed away from dealing drugs all week. Okay, what was it? Ability, yeah. I mostly forgot to call my probation officer. Okay. I didn't hang with my homies last night, and instead I took care of my baby sister. What was it? Can't afford to get another DUI. You guys are so tentative. What is this one? Okay, so can't afford, so there's some desire in that, and I think reasons too. Yeah, if I get another, the implicit there is if I get another DUI, I'm hosed, right? So it could be either one. I'm going to stop hanging around them so much, and then I won't be so tempted to use. Nice. All right, so what was it? There were 2 pieces in there. So I'm going to stop I'm going to stop hanging around them so much. Which one was that? Commitment, yeah. And then I won't be so tempted to use. Reasons, yeah. I've been kind of forgetting to take my antidepressants. I tried out for the track team. All right, tell me about it. What is it? Yeah, it may be commitment, and it may be ability, depending on what the target is, which now goes back to our anchor, engaging, focusing. In order for us to know what kind of change talk we're getting, we need to know what the target is. And the only way we know what the target is if we've had enough discussion to find that shared agenda. So we can't just pay attention to change talk if we don't even know what the target is, because we won't know. So that hones in on that point. All right, let's see. If I lose this job, my girlfriend is definitely going to leave me. Okay, what is it? Reasons? Yeah, I think it's probably reasons. Mostly I just don't see any benefits to getting my high school degree. It's tempting there, right? You want to tell him all the benefits of getting his high school degree. And then he's going to tell you why those don't fit for him. And now you've just elicited sustained talk. And then you're going to see my face in your head. And it's going to be really depressing. Don't do it. All right. I guess next time I could call you first. What is it? Ability, yeah. I could call you. That's light, right? He's not saying he's going to. He's saying, I guess I could, but we still want to hear that. All right. I'll do anything to get rid of the pain. Now, here's a situation where we need to know what the focus is. So what would you guys say there? A need or a reason. Let's say this person's trying to do something besides using opiates. Then, absolutely, it's a need or a reason. But if they're giving you a reason why they're going to get those narcotics off the street, so now, again, we need to know what is that target? What's that shared agenda? And that's where focusing comes in. So yeah, spot on. I could probably cut down a bit. Okay, what is it? Ability. It's light, but it's there. And you guys, this is what you're going to get. I could probably, maybe, sort of. It's in there. We want to hear it. We want to reflect it. I'm sick of smoking. It makes me stink. Okay, what is it? Yeah, reasons? Yeah. If I don't finish this treatment program, I might as well throw in the towel. Nobody. I see a little bit. Tell me what you think it might be. Yeah, I think there's some in there. It's just nested in a bunch of mess. If I don't finish this treatment program, so there's the desire in there, I really need to. What we're getting kind of overwhelmed by is that throwing in the towel part. That's oh no, what does that mean? But so you're seeing that there might be a benefit here to finishing the treatment program. That might be your reflection on the change talk part. I don't see why drinking 4 or 5 beers at night is such a big deal. I love my baby. That's why I'm definitely not going to smoke around her. Yay. Commitment language. I'm definitely not going to do that. All right. I need to get back some energy. What is it? Desire, reasons, maybe? Yeah. Need. I need to get back some energy. Yeah, it could be any of those. I'm tired of being overweight. Reasons. And last one. I'm going to start going to school every day. Thanks. All right. So you've just practiced listening for change talk, and even more importantly, you've practiced not jumping all over the sustained talk, which is really tempting. When we hear that stuff, we're like, oh, got to do something about it. Just leaving it alone. This is just restating what we've already talked about. Those two things are so important. Two factors are so important with motivation: importance and confidence. And then you can even have something be really important and you can be really confident you can do it, but you can say, not ready right this minute. So if I were going to quit smoking and it's right before the holidays, I might be sure I can do it, and I might think it's really, really important, but I might say my in-laws are coming in town, and so I'd like to wait until they've gone home to try quitting smoking. That would be readiness. But the two key factors are the importance and the confidence. All right, we're gonna have this slide branded into your brains. So we've talked about engaging and focusing, and we've been looking at how do you evoke change talk. We've got about 25 minutes, so I'm gonna push real fast through planning because you guys know how to do that. You do it every day. So when importance and confidence are high, and how would you know, by the way, that importance and confidence are high? What do you hear more of and what do you hear less of? You hear more change talk, and you're hearing very little sustained talk. That's how you know. You're tuning your ears in. So when those are high, you can do that kind of key question. So what next? This is when I might do a summary and then that key question. So where do we go from here? And then I'm going to support how they choose to do it, even if it's not exactly how I might choose to do it. Now, sometimes when I ask somebody about their confidence, they'll say, oh, it's a 6. And sometimes I'll say then, one of the most important things for motivation is confidence. And I'm wondering if we adjusted your goal. I don't want you to set the bar so high that you can't succeed and then you're just frustrated. If we were going to adjust your goal just a little bit so you were even more confident, what might that goal look like? So sometimes I'll try to get them to ease down their expectations so that their confidence is like an 8 or higher. I don't force that, but if we can set a little bit lower bar and have their confidence an 8 or a 9, they're more likely to succeed, and success breeds more confidence, which breeds more motivation, and so on and so forth. But I support it regardless. And then we want to have that follow-up set in place. You guys use action plans or some variation of action plans? Yeah. So this is where we use the action plans because we want them to be able to actually operationalize and see that success. That's important. And we want them to know, of course, that lapse is normal and we can get back on track and that effort counts. Now, what I'd like to do here, this is a video of a physician who's gone through some training on motivational interviewing, and she's talking to a mom who's smoking in the house in front of her new baby, and the baby keeps getting ear infections. And it's pretty good motivational interviewing, which is why I chose this particular video. So what I'm going to encourage you guys to do, because we've gone through a whole bunch of stuff here, but I really want you to be able to sort of digest it. And then the task after this 4 hours is going to be to take that and really think about it as you're applying it in the work that you do. But for the purposes of this video, if you have a piece of scratch paper, I'd encourage you to pull that out and a pen. And do one of two things, depending on where you think you want to stretch your skills the most. Some of you may be just learning about open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. So what you can do on your scratch paper is do an O, an A, an R, and an S on the paper, and do little hash marks under each one when you hear the provider use any of those strategies. So if you hear an open-ended question, you do a little hash mark under the O, and kind of keep track of that all the way through the little interview. That's one option. Maybe you're more comfortable with that already and you want to take the next step, which is listening for change talk versus sustained talk. And so on your scratch paper on one side you may have ST for sustained talk and CT for change talk on the other side, and keep track when you hear one or the other. And as you're hearing that, notice what came before. What did the provider do or say right before that elicited either change or sustained talk? kind of see how that goes. Now, for those of you that have been working on motivational interviewing for a bit, and you're feeling really industrious, you could do both. You can keep track of what the provider's doing, the open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries, and what she's getting back from the mom, which would be change talk versus sustain talk. All right? So let's just see how this goes. It's about a 5-minute video, but we really want to practice tuning in as we watch this video. That's the opportunity that I want you to have with this. Any questions before we start? Okay. Good luck.
Watch what happens this time when the provider cues in to what the parent is saying, empathizes with her situation, and attempts to work with the parent to find a solution that fits her needs.
So I wrote a prescription for antibiotics for Aiden.
Okay.
I did want to talk to you, though. I'm a little bit concerned looking through his chart at how many ear infections he's had recently, and I noticed that you had checked the box that someone's smoking in the home. So I was wondering if you can tell me a little more about that.
Well, it's just me and him, and I do smoke. I try really hard not to smoke around him, but I've been smoking for 10 years, except when I was pregnant with him. But it's so stressful being a single mom and having a full-time job, and so that's why I started smoking again.
You have a lot of things going on, and smoking's kind of a way to relax and de-stress.
Yes, yeah. Some people have a glass of wine, I have a cigarette.
Sure. And it sounds like you're trying not to smoke around him. Why did you make that decision?
I know it's not good for him. I mean, I've read those things about ear infections and asthma and stuff, but other kids have ear infections and their parents don't smoke.
So on the one hand, you're worried about how your smoking might be affecting him, and on the other hand, you're not so sure if it's really the smoking that's causing these problems.
Right, yeah. I mean, he doesn't have asthma. He hasn't had a lot of other problems that his other friends have. So, and I've thought about quitting before in the past, but I just don't see how it's possible right now.
What made you decide to quit smoking when you were pregnant?
Well, he was inside me and we were sharing everything, and I knew that he would get some of that, and I just didn't think I could live with myself if something happened to him.
Right now, though, it feels almost too difficult to even manage or even to try.
Yeah, exactly.
How were you successful when you quit before?
I don't know. I think about it now, I don't even know how I did it. I just did it. You know, I just couldn't imagine like him not being born or going into labor early and him having problems and stuff like that, all the stuff that they talk about with women who smoke. So that was just enough to say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to risk that. So
the risks were so scary then that you're able to stop. But
yeah.
They don't feel as scary to you now.
No, I mean, we're two separate people, and like I said, I try really hard not to smoke around him. I'm pretty good about that. I don't let other people smoke around him. So
You're doing the best you can do.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, but it sounds to me too like part of you really does want to quit.
Yeah, I know that I